and welcome to 9 to 42, the podcast from the team at the Guitar Show UK. Join us for interviews, updates and chat with artists, influencers and those that manufacture the gear that we love. Hello and welcome to 9 to 42, which is the podcast from the guys at the Guitar Show UK. My very good friend Jace Hunt is resplendent in a kind of red and white hooped t-shirt, Jace. That's a bit of a young look you're trying to pull off.
It's called a Breton.
Is
honestly.
it really? I thought they were blue.
Well, they do them in red as well.
Right, Brett okay. Off, I think, would probably be better.
Brett off.
Sorry, that's my first contribution to the podcast. I do apologise.
It's over. I'm not going to say who you are. We'll still make that a surprise. So how are you, Jace?
I'm very good, mate. I'm very good.
Cool.
I was just telling you, I had some really good news yesterday from my other job, the uni thing. My course was rated the top course at BIM Birmingham, so I'm delighted with that news.
I think it's brilliant news. I think really superb news. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And our guest, who's very kindly got up at the crack of dawn to come and do the episode with us, is Chris Book. Chris, good morning. How are you?
Not so bad. I didn't know there were 2 9 o'clocks in a day prior to this. So yeah, you'll pay for this at some point. But I'm good. Well, yeah. I'm good, thank you.
Cool. And I was going to introduce you, but how would you want to be introduced?
Well, it says on his website, musician. Nature's occupation for the otherwise unemployable, which I thought was the perfect description.
It's fairly accurate, isn't it, if nothing else?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And you're, am I right in saying you're stupidly young? You're in your mid to late 20s, aren't you?
I've just ticked over the wrong side of 30.
Have you?
A couple months ago, yeah. So it's all downhill from here, isn't it?
Jesus, you're baby-faced for 30.
No, I know. I'll be able to grow some facial hair one day and I'll actually look my age and won't get ID'd when I try and buy scissors.
I was just saying you must still get ID'd.
Oh, man, all the time. For things you don't even need to get ID'd for.
That's awful for a musician to still get ID'd.
The last time I got ID'd was about 10 years ago, so I would have been well into my 40s at this point. And I was at LAX airport waiting to catch the flight home from Nam. And I ordered a beer. And they said, have you got any ID, sir? And I said, isn't the grey hair enough?
Yeah.
And they were like, no.
Especially after a week of Nam.
Yeah.
It adds 15 years instantly, doesn't it?
When you go to those self-checkouts in the supermarket and you're buying alcohol, and obviously the light goes on and they have to come and okay it. And on the options on the screen, there's the kind of, have you asked for ID? And there's one that is obviously over 25, and the number of times they come across, just one glance at me and just go straight for the obviously over 20. It's really quite disconcerting. Anyway, back to Chris.
Yes.
Back to Chris. So musician,
and I think you could clearly say YouTuber, 137,000 followers on YouTube.
You're more up to date with it on than I am, so.
Oh, you must have a plaque then. Don't they send you a plaque at 100,000?
Yeah, they did at 100,000. It's proudly displayed in my downstairs toilet. YouTube. I mean, YouTube is a funny thing in that it's instantly got that kind of negative connotation attached to it, unfortunately. But it's the YouTube thing came about. I just was bored, quite frankly. And just feeling a little bit frustrated, I guess, at not the pace at which the band I was in was kind of moving at, so much as wanting to dictate my own kind of trajectory a little bit more, and thinking, well, what can I do just that is solely reliant on myself to sort of try and dictate the pace at which I move at? And YouTube seemed like an obvious option. So I remember the first episode of Friday Fretworks, which is the thing I do, I remember saying to camera, I'm going to do this once a week with absolutely zero intention of ever doing it once a week. It was kind of half just to kind of goad myself into it, if nothing else. And like 2.5, 3 years later, here I am still pumping out some nonsense every week. So yes, the YouTube thing, the band thing or whatever, it's whatever it takes to get by these days as a musician, really, isn't it? So I'm not resorted to selling my body on the street yet. So.
Well, I suppose we should probably start with Fretworks then, as you've talked about it. And I mean, it started off sort of like very much just you and your gear, but now you seem to get like tons of gear come through. I mean, is there like a constant sort of like UPS delivery service to your front door from the manufacturers?
Near enough, much to my wife's frustration. Because most of it just seems to accumulate then in my garage. Yeah, it's a funny one. The thing I've always been quite conscious of with Friday for Artworks, I guess, is that there's so many guys out there who do incredible jobs of the whole kind of gear review thing.
Yeah.
You know, Pete Thorne, Rabia, all these guys who that's their job, you know. And I'm just not as good at it. I can't be asked to put the effort into the kind of the gear review side of things, to be honest. So I've always tried to make it a little bit more kind of, I don't know, wide ranging, I guess. More subjects as opposed to here's this new pedal, here's this new amp, have a listen to it. Of course, then you try and find ways to wangle a new amp or a new pedal into something, but I'll try and make it a little bit more kind of wide ranging as opposed to something, oh, this is this new specific thing, you know. And I think that's been kind of bear out, I guess, in the sort of response I get. I think people have those guys that they go to for those things, you know. So if there's another guy suddenly doing exactly the same, and I remember the first time I realised that it was just, you get a company approach you and say, can you do this video about this item, this product, and then can it be released on this day? And naively you think, cool, I'm getting a bit of an exclusive here. And then of course the moment that goes up, 55 other videos go up all about the same product because they've sent it out to any number of guys. And then suddenly you're thinking, well, why would anyone watch my video over guys that they know and they love and they watch frequently anyway? So I thought, well, let's kind of tame the product side of things a little bit and focus more on, you know, like I said, kind of concepts, I guess, as opposed to specifics. But it's just, honestly, the difficulty with YouTube is just finding something to talk about every week. You'll go through periods where I'm not short of an idea, and then you'll go through periods where it's just barren, for want of a better phrase, and you kind of you're scratching around every week to try and find something to sort of witter on about for a half hour. So yeah, it's a hell of a commitment, but yeah, as I've been reminded, it's hardly digging coal, is it? So I'll hurry up, really. Shut up.
Yeah, I mean, it was really noticeable when Fender released, I can't remember what it's called, that acoustic Strat shape.
Oh, the Acoustasonic, yeah.
Acoustasonic, and like YouTube was just full of, you know, not even people I follow, but because of my search history in the past, on that day. And it was like, I think someone in the marketing department thought that would be a really good idea, but ultimately, you just go, oh, it's another fucking video of that Acoustasonic thing. You know,
it's very easy to sort of reach saturation point very quickly in there, you know, and I think it's testament to reasons that huge artists, you know, like, I don't know, Ed Sheeran off the top of my head, I think make a very concerted effort at a certain point after a cycle. I think their time off is not so much just because they feel like they've deserved it, so much as, well, I think everyone's probably sick of seeing my face and hearing my name for a little while. Let's have a palate cleanser, let's go away and leave it until things are a little bit fresh and I can come back, you know. And I think that's kind of, you know, people can be guilty of that with YouTube as well, is that it's an insanely easy marketing tool, isn't it? You know, it's kind of, for the price of a video that you pay YouTube or whatever, think of the reach that you get. I mean, I know people who don't have TV licenses anymore, they just watch Netflix and YouTube. So you think, well, for the money that you would probably spend on a TV advert that might reach a couple of million people, 1% of which would be interested. If you can get these videos out to guys who are making dedicated guitar videos every week, then suddenly they're going to have a switched on, engaged audience who are going to want to hear about something guitar related. So it seems like a no-brainer for companies, I guess, but like you said, it's very easy to sort of reach saturation point very quickly with that sort of stuff.
I think part of the problem there is that at the beginning, when it was happening naturally, almost accidentally, to a certain extent, because you might get people taking a new product and actually making the decision to review it themselves with no support from the brand, and then of course the brands look at it and go, actually that's quite interesting. We're seeing traction from this, and then of course they overplan it, they overplay it, you know, to the point now where you kind of look at something and go, well, if I'm seeing 10, 12 videos of that on the same day,
it's clearly not organic.
Yeah, well, A, it's not organic, and B, they look like they're a bit desperate. Is the product just a bit shit? You know,
like you said, I think to start off with, at least, I guess the kind of the peak of YouTube, I guess, as a kind of major way of making money. Obviously, there's people like Rob Chapman that very, very much sort of came to the fore on the crest of that wave, I guess, you know. And I mean, irrespective of what people think of Rob Chapman, you know, obviously was very much at that kind of the crest of that YouTube wave, 10 years ago, whatever it was. And, I think it's such a new platform, as is the internet, it's all so new. We kind of forget that I think it takes its time to find its feet sometimes. And like you said, companies see what is otherwise quite an organic method of advertising products and think, well, let's leap on that, and then suddenly it becomes very orchestrated and it becomes a little bit contrived. And I think the one thing I've learned, through YouTube is that the kind of buying public or your audience or whoever is watching a video for whatever reason is very receptive to that sort of stuff and very switched on to if they perceive something to be a little bit sort of underhand or a little bit sort of, well, this is just an advert, and I think people are very receptive to that and very sort of aware of it. So I think you just got to be careful.
So your guitar rig crisis, has that been sorted now?
Yeah, well, this is part of the thing, isn't it? I get so much grief every now and then for the kind of clickbait thing, and I hate doing it. I'll be the first to say that if I could have called that video, I'm thinking of moving to a smaller amp, I would have, because I was talking about this with my wife recently, and she hates it because she's a scientist, so obviously has a very analytical, very scientific brain, and she's like, well, it's not neatly kind of organised. No, but if someone's having a similar situation where they want to move from a high headroom, high loud wattage amp down to a smaller amp, where are they going to find that in the library? It's not archived under the correct position because you've given it some bullshit title like My Guitar Rig Crisis. I was like, trust me, I know. I wish I could just label them accurately, but then no bugger would watch them. And it's, every now and then I do get a bit of grief on that, and it's always the same response of, don't hate the player, hate the game. Unfortunately, YouTube, for whatever reason, rewards that sort of kind of slightly provocative, clickbaity angle that people go down. And as long as it rewards that and more people watch it and you get paid more for your video, then it doesn't really give you much incentive to not do that, really. It's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, really, isn't it? It's, like I said, I wish I could just call the videos what I want to call them, and which is more factually accurate to the content, I guess. But then, like I said, no bugger would actually watch it. So,
so are you moving to a smaller amp?
Yeah, I think. It's funny. I've spent donkey's years at this point chasing that sort of high headroom, loud, clean power, that kind of thing, And I think because I convinced myself that was what I wanted, and gone through a succession of amps and kind of settled in on a couple that I like, or that at least I think I like. That do that thing very well. And don't get me wrong, I still love that sound, and after 3 weeks of using this little Pro Reverb thing that I've been using, the new Fender amp, I might go back to my old setup, and there might be certain aspects of that I'm missing. But the one thing I've always had slight reservations about with that live, loud, clean headroom setup is that if you're having a bad night, you're having a bad night. There's absolutely nowhere to hide. If you've got headroom for days, every little nuance and every little subtlety, for better or worse, comes through, And if you're having a great night, then that's fantastic, because it only amplifies that sort of subtlety. If you're having a bad night, it amplifies you having feet for hands, So
yeah, but don't you find that that's all? It's kind of a lot of the time. I think, thinking back from when I used to gig, it was all in my head. Every time we come off stage and go, God, we were awful tonight.
Yeah.
You'd walk out the front and people go, that's the best I've ever seen you play.
And conversely, really? When you think you're having a great night and then no bugger claps and then comes up to you at the end of the gig and goes, that was amazing. You go, oh, cheers, thanks for clapping. We've all played those gigs in the Dog and Duck over the years. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, kind of went through a phase of sort of recording gigs that I was playing just on my phone, sticking my phone somewhere and then using it as a tool to kind of listen back, almost from a kind of semi-analytical sort of perspective, I guess, just to listen to stuff that maybe I was over-reliant on, or stuff that I was doing that I thought sounded great at the time but maybe didn't sound so good. And like you said, 9 times out of 10, if you feel like you've had an absolute shitter of an evening, it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. And it's the same as anything, isn't it? Like, I played a hell of a lot of sport before I became a dolly musician bum, so it's something I can easily equate it to. If you're having a bad game, irrespective of the sport, you work a little bit harder to push yourself through it, and it's the same with guitar. If I feel like I'm having a bad night, I'll just play a little bit harder, I'll dig in a little bit harder to try and make sure I'm through it, So yeah, I've no doubt a massive percentage of that is in my head, but having been fiddling around with that Pro Reverb recently, just loved that sort of, not only the kind of less headroom, I guess, and that sort of just revealing horribleness of all the headroom in the world, but just slight sponginess under the fingers of like a lower wattage amp. And just, it's a great sounding amp anyway. I might change the speaker at some point because it's got one of those new neodymium lightweight speakers in it, which is great for my back, but I think I might stick an EV in there or something, which at that point you've got to question, well, am I really downsizing or am I just moving it into a smaller box? Smaller, heavier box. But yes is the long answer, and yes is the shorter answer to my guitar crisis being fixed, or at least sorted for the time being anyway, until next week's video.
I suppose we should kind of like get on to, you know, the playing, because you've got two bands at the moment, haven't you? So I'm assuming you're still in Buck and Evans.
Yeah, get a lot of questions about that, understandably so, I guess, since Cardinal Black launched. I mean, funnily enough, a global pandemic seems to give one quite a lot of time on their hands to do stuff. So, you know, there's absolutely no reason that the two bands can't run entirely parallel. I mean, we've never gigged a hell of a lot with Buck and Evans anyway, just by the nature of the band. You know, I'm the only one in the band that is a kind of quote-unquote professional musician. All of the other guys have day gigs. To be honest, that's pretty much every other band in the land does these days, especially in light of the last 18 months or so, you know. So yeah, there was always just a kind of limit to it, as much as we could tour or as much as we could do with that band. So it just made sense, you know. The Cardinal Black thing, weirdly, that was actually a band that has its kind of genesis probably about a decade ago. That was the first proper band I was ever in, was Cardinal Black. At the time, it was called the Tom Hollister Trio. He was the singer in the band. It sounds like a very egotistical move on his part, but it was his university project, basically. It was his final kind of degree piece, was to put together a band, record an EP, and launch said band, and then that was it. And out of the blue, Steve Winwood showed up at the EP launch, loved it, had a quick chat to us, and said, "Oh, you know, if you're ever in my neck of the woods, pop by. You know, I've got this studio, which he's built to his own spec." And we're like, "Yeah, great, Monday then it is." So yeah, see you at 9 o'clock. So we kind of invited ourselves along, really, and the band kind of snowballed off the back of that. And I guess we had a very busy sort of year and a half as that band, and then the usual sort of bullshit creative differences, you know, sleeping with each other's wives, all that kind of stuff. Not really. Just trying to make it more interesting. Just yeah, we split up, but we kind of remained friends, you know, for the last 10 years. We've done quite a lot of musical stuff together, whether it's like the odd wedding here and there or whatever, you know, the usual shit everyone does. And just the pandemic, everyone's suddenly having a kind of clean schedule for the foreseeable. It just made sense to get together, and at the very least, let's start rehashing through those 20 songs that we wrote 10 years ago. And then as soon as you start doing that, well, lo and behold, some new songs come out of the woodwork. So it snowballed very quickly, you know, and it's been about 2.5 months, I think, since we launched the band. The first track went to the top of the bloody iTunes rock charts, much to all of our amazement, and that kind of set the tone, really, as to where it was sort of going to go from there. So it's been a hectic 2 months, to say the least, and yeah, our EP is actually out today for those listeners. So
yes, it was because I was on the website and I was reading the about section, and I think certainly in the first sentence is kind of I think it says, you know, formed 10 years ago, alt rock band, and I was thinking, oh, okay, and then you listen to it and you go, this isn't alt rock at all. This is very sort of soulful rock.
We had no idea what to call ourselves. Someone else suggested alt rock, and I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Sounds like I might have a degree. So we went with alt rock. I don't know what alt rock means, to be honest. I play guitar. I listen to the stuff I listen to. We've got fairly wide ranging influences between the band, I guess. Like Tom, the singer, is a huge like James Taylor fan, John Martin, Paul Simon, that kind of, you know, kind of classic sort of songwriter angle. Obviously I'd come up through the guitar school. Adam, the drummer's a big Motown fan, so as long as I knew him back in the day, he was in different soul bands. And yeah, it's just a fairly wide range of influences within the band, which then I guess makes it a little bit hard to kind of pin it down. And I guess alt rock maybe made us sound slightly more specific than, oh, you're a rock band. Does that mean you sound like the Foo Fighters, or you sound like Cradle of Filth? You know, what does that mean? So yeah.
So where did you say you went to guitar school? Which one did you go to?
Oh, I didn't go to guitar school. I did a year at a university which has since closed, which probably tells you the quality of the establishment. University of South Wales, which its rating is currently down at about 40,000, I think, out of the 100 or so unis there are in the UK. No, it's closed actually, and the best thing that it's done in recent years was provide the set for Netflix Sex Education with Gillian Anderson. Honestly, I didn't want to go to uni. I very early on, this is the curse, I guess, of finding something like the guitar where you have this compulsion and this conviction then of that's what I'm going to do with my life, and nobody else can tell me otherwise. The only other thing I was even vaguely interested in school, apart from sport, and I was never anywhere good enough to be looking at that as a career, I liked English. I was pretty good at English. I kind of breezed through my sort of English lit and language at GCSE and then at A-level as well. So I guess there was a brief sort of dalliance with the idea of being a journalist or something, but again, just nothing came near to that love I suddenly felt for guitar once I found that, and once I realised I was okay at it as well, I guess. Everything else that I'd done in my life to that point, hobbies or whatever, it always felt like a little bit of an effort. I wasn't very good at anything, I put a great deal of effort in to be as good as the guy next door. Whereas with guitar, it was suddenly a case of, well, this feels like it comes relatively naturally. That makes sense. If I put that chord next to that chord, that sounds good. Away we go, So I knew very early on that I wanted to be a guitar player, which is both amazing and the worst thing in the world if you want to get any GCSEs. Because suddenly that became all I ever wanted to do, So any time that was meant to be spent revising was suddenly spent sort of dicking around on the guitar. And that very quickly made the decision for me that, well, I can't really see what a university is going to offer me, really. There's no... Like, my parents, to their eternal credit, both of which came from slightly more kind of quote-unquote normal backgrounds, both were very receptive to the idea of, okay, well, he's going to be a musician. Nobody knows what that entails. There's not really anything... There's not like a kind of 12-step thing you can do, and then at the end of it, you're a rock star. It's all kind of reliant on how good you are, and if you get a lucky break, who you know, who you meet, who you bump into, whatever. But both of them, to their eternal credit, were just like, yeah, go for it. If you love it, do it. And if you need help, we'll be there to help, and if not, more power to you. But when the time came to it, when I was 17 or whatever, and I just finished my A-levels, it was a case of, right, well, now you either go to uni or you get a job. So, right, I'll go to uni then. But like I said, I knew from about probably the age of 14 onwards that I had no interest in uni, really. So I went for a year to do a music degree, hated every second of it, and just sort of spent an increasing amount of time. That was around about the time of the trio, the Tom Hollister trio, my kind of first bona fide band, I guess, starting to get a little bit of traction. And I remember on the day it came to the last day of term in uni for my first year, we found out that we were doing a BBC session, and we were playing at Solosphere Festival. And it was like, that kind of feels like the universe is telling me that's probably where you want to go, rather than kind of spending, I don't know, however many grand a year it was to do a degree that I wasn't interested in. So that made my decision for me. So, I don't regret university. There's nothing to regret, really. But, bizarrely, the one person I met who I'm still really good mates with at uni is a guy called Chris Watkins, who was there doing a music degree, but also at the time started kind of fiddling about with cameras, just because that was something else he found that he enjoyed. And he's now an incredible videographer who shoots everything pretty much of any level that I ever do, and that's a contact I made through uni. So if nothing else, it was worth paying $4,000 just to go meet a video guy. So
you've probably saved that money over many times.
Oh yeah. I still haven't paid my student loan back though. So.
Am I right in thinking that after uni you moved to Birmingham? Is that right?
Kind of, yeah. So my wife was working at Birmingham University for a very long time, so I was spending pretty much all week sort of bumbling about, again, in the sort of my equivalent of John Lennon's Lost Years, really, or the Lost Weekend or whatever it was, where I just didn't quite know what I was doing. The trio would split up, and it kind of left me with this sense of, well, my name wasn't on the band. There was a bit of noise about me as a guitar player, but that soon dissipates as soon as the band that you're in splits up and nobody knows where to listen to you anymore. So I was like, well, what do I do now? And that was around about that time I made a very conscious decision to start building this idea of me as a brand, I guess. I'm this guy who plays guitar, and okay, I may be in bands as well, but I Chris Buck is a kind of name that you hopefully want to listen to. And that was when my wife was in Birmingham University, so I was bouncing up and down the M5, once or twice a week, living in Sturchley. So yeah, I really miss Birmingham. I guess the life she lives as being a scientist is fairly nomadic, kind of bouncing around from place to place. And of all the places we've lived, or in France, or in Glasgow, or wherever, Birmingham I do miss. So.
Oh, bless you. Well, you get to come back every year, don't you, to the guitar show? So.
yeah. Not missing enough to stay, mind, but no, I do miss it.
So, I was reading that there's some kind of connection with Alan Niven, who was Guns N' Roses and then subsequently Izzy Stradlin's manager.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did that?
Bizarrely, YouTube. So the kind of sort of forerunner, I guess, of me doing YouTube more recently was I started uploading videos of myself to YouTube when I was about 16, I guess. Just me in my bedroom with a camera that I'd stuck on top of my desk, just playing along to whatever it was that I was listening to at the time, So growing up, huge Guns N' Roses fan, Deep Purple, Bowie, AC/DC, whatever, all the kind of usual suspects. And out of the blue, Alan, from his house in the Arizona desert, came across me. And just sent me a kind of really curt one-line message of like, "You're not bad, keep it up." And and obviously, being the huge Guns N' Roses fan that I was, I knew his name. I'd read, voraciously read every kind of biography or any book about Guns N' Roses that I could get my hands on. So I very much knew his name and the sort of pivotal role that he played in their career. So I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing! I'm going to badger you every second of every day, asking you advice to like, well, what's Slash like, all this kind of stuff." And Alan, to his eternal credit, didn't tell me to fuck off. So I guess a couple of years passed then, and then when the trio got going, it kind of made sense for him to say at the very least, well, let me try managing you. There's going to be this gulf of 5,000 miles between us, and I've never managed a band from the other side of the world before, but hey ho, the world's getting smaller, let's give it a go. And I think in hindsight we were just a little bit young and naive, and I guess we wanted that sort of immediacy of having someone kind of on top of us every day, I guess, telling us what to do, to make sure we maintain this kind of focus. But once that split up then, and then when Buck and Evans got going again, Alan just said, "Look, no obligation, but if you want me to manage you guys, I'll try and point you in the right direction," and set up a couple of connections. So yeah, Alan, he's not managing, he took a back step about a year or two ago, but just for someone who's had such an incredible wealth of experience and such a kind of experience of working at the highest level in the industry. I mean, when he took over Guns N' Roses, they were a kind of ramshackle Sunset Strip band, struggling to pull in 30, 40 people. And then I think one of the last gigs he ever did with them was Wembley Stadium, 4 years later or whatever. Yeah. So that stratospheric rise, he was very much at the helm during that period. And obviously has been there, done it, and got the T-shirt and lived a life because of it, So just to have someone, as much as he was our manager for a very long period, I think the way I always thought of Alan was more as this kind of Yoda character, I guess, of, maybe the person to try and pull the reins in a little bit when I was getting a little bit excited and running away with myself. I think the prime example being that I played with Slash in 2012, and totally unbeknownst to me, Alan had kind of been drip feeding stuff of mine to Slash for a very long time prior to that. And of course, when I got wind of that then, and there was this like remote possibility of one day playing with my hero, I was like, right, cool, let's do it tomorrow. And Alan was the guy going, "No, you're not ready." And of course you don't know what that means when you're 18, 19. So of course I'm ready. I know my pentatonics. I'm ready now. Let's do it. And, in hindsight, it was his way of saying, find your feet a little bit, become your own player a little bit more, because if I was 18-year-old me getting up on stage with Slash, I would have been trying to out Slash, would have been there with the sort of big hair and the Les Paul and the kind of Marshall stack or whatever. And it was Alan that was very much thinking, well, no, let's try and find your feet a little bit more. Maybe pick up Strat, you might find your own voice through a Strat a little bit more. And he was very much pivotal in guiding me through that kind of process and those decisions, I guess. And then when he finally felt like the time was right, then the call happened, So yeah, Alan's been, it's impossible to overstate his importance really for everything I've done thus far, and I genuinely wouldn't have got anywhere near as far as I've got today without his guidance. So
that's really interesting, because I think, in terms of finding who you are as a guitarist, I think you've got a really unique kind of way of playing. I mean, there's a lot of
thank you.
With your you don't use a plectrum as much. I only use a plectrum. Let's be honest. But it's I don't know whether you become slightly more expressive when you're I suppose you're using both hands, aren't you? Whereas I'm just kind of going up and down sort of thing.
That's the thing. That's the thing that people forget, I guess, is that you are using both hands, or at least you're meant to be. And it's very much the kind of the relationship, that kind of symbiosis between your two hands, not just a case of, well, this is happening, this is doing, hammering away with my right, and then it's the left hand that's doing all the intricate stuff. And, as much as I can sort of say that and make it sound like it was a considered conscious thought process, it wasn't. It was just, I genuinely think the playing with my fingers thing was just born out of noodling around on the sofa in the house, dropping your pick, it disappearing into that abyss that is occupied by picks and pen lids. And just not being asked to get off the sofa and get another plectrum. So just thinking, well, I'll just play with my fingers, and then getting progressively better at that. And then after a time, that kind of worked its way into my technique, where I kind of tuck the pick away and then maybe use my thumb and my second and my ring finger. And I guess the sort of the serendipity of that then is it makes you more expressive. It makes you gives you more control and more freedom over what you're trying to say and how you're trying to say it. So you can kind of do the cliched whisper to a scream thing very easily, If I'm playing with my fingers, it's going to sound dark and soft and fleshy. If I'm digging in with a pick, you can kind of go full Stevie Ray if you want to, So it gives you a little bit more night and shade, I guess. And like I said, as much as I could claim that was a conscious thing, it's just something that's crept into my playing and developed over the years, And the wider range of stuff I listen to then, the more influences I'm exposed to, dynamic range is where it's at for me. It always has been, that's how you express yourself best, is when you can play from, like I said, whisper or scream, I guess, and fingers and pick allow me to do that. Or at least I feel they do anyway.
I suppose, and then it comes on to, I suppose, the 2019 Best New Guitarist in the World award. And it's like,
speaking of clickbait,
how on earth though do you how do you deal with that sort of pressure?
Just started signing photos instantly and sending them out to people who hadn't asked for them. Honestly, it's stuff like that is a bit mad, really. And still, kind of, if I try and process something like that, it's like Paul McCartney. I remember reading a quote, of if Paul McCartney focused on the fact that he was Paul McCartney, his head would probably explode, And obviously not to compare myself to that in any way, shape or form, but I don't think you can dwell on such like hyperbole for any amount of time, because it's not healthy, It's not healthy to you developing as a musician or moving forward or having any sort of sense of progression, because it's, I guess, it would be easy to look at that and think, well, I'm at the top of the mountain, what are all you idiots doing down there, and obviously that's not the case. It's just, it's the way the internet moves these days. Like I said earlier, it's a bit of hyperbole, it's a bit of clickbait to draw people in. Let's give it an absolutely ludicrous title, because we know that'll divide opinion, and it'll get people talking, and it'll generate interaction and, whatever. And then it just so happened to be me that was at the kind of the head of all that, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever. As much as I can kind of downplay or denigrate stuff like that, it would be absolutely naive of me to, I'm kind of falsely modest to say that had no impact on my career. Of course it does. It makes people pay attention, the fact that I'm kind of like a Fender artist, whatever that means. When people see me going out and doing stuff with Fender, it's like, oh, well, I know, even if you're not a musician, I know the name Fender, well, he must be okay then, and that's what that did for my career, I guess. And then off the back of that, inevitably start getting calls off, like ITV Wales and BBC Wales, can you come down and be on the TV? Can you do an interview on the radio? And I remember getting an email off ITV Wales saying, do you want to come and be on the news at 6? I was like, if no other reason other than I can ring my nan and go, look, Nan, I'm on the telly. I was like, absolutely. So then I had a couple of emails bouncing back and forth with the producer, who, bless him, clearly had no concept of, what it meant to be a musician. And I remember his first email saying, can you play something impressive? I was like, all right, I'll figure something out. And then his next email was, can you play Sweet Child of Mine? I was like, I can, but I'm not playing it on the news. And he really wasn't getting it. He was like, well, I just think that'll blow people's minds. I was like, well, no, it would blow your mind. And in the end, I just lied. I was like, I don't know it. as the person who had a Les Paul and a Marshall stack and backcomb his hair within an inch of his life to look like Slash. Of course I don't know Switch on the Mind. Yeah, it was just a bit of a mad period. And then, like more recently than that, again, Music Radar ran that Best Blues Guitarist poll, which again, somehow I came out on top of. So it's just, I don't know, it is what it is, you know. It would be falsely modest of me to say I didn't publicise that on my social media. But at the same time, you know, I wasn't kind of rallying around mates to vote for me or whatever. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, be honest, though. You're in a house with a scientist. Have you ever been having an argument and gone, yeah, you might be a scientist, but I'm the best new guitarist in the world?
Are you the best new scientist in the world? No, I think not. Yeah, no, it comes in handy if I want to throw my weight around in the house. But suffice to say that I stopped working about 15 minutes after the thing was announced. So,
oh man, I'd have T-shirts with it on and everything.
You see, I wouldn't. I'd already played that one through and thought if I was relying on that to help me win arguments in the house, I've already lost. I've already lost. So I'd probably go with you, Chris. I'd probably keep it on the low, I reckon.
Did you get a plaque? Did Music Radar send you a plaque that you can put next to your YouTube thing in the toilet?
They didn't. I just had it tattooed on my forehead instead. So no, it's bizarre, isn't it?
So I was going to ask because I was trying to glance at the brand on your T-shirt.
Oh yeah,
but I was going to ask you about the pickups. Because you've got some. Are they Strat pickups? Signature Strat pickups?
Yes, they are. Yes. So Radio Shop, the company on my T-shirt here, is a kind of one-man band. I was going to say that doesn't quite make sense, does
Every pickup company is a two-man, one-man band.
Yeah, absolutely. In South Wales, and got in touch with me a very long time ago, actually. I think as soon as I started making any degree of noise, and just sent me an email saying, "Oh, you know, love what you're doing. Do you want to try some of our pickups?" So over I went. I had absolutely zero idea. I, of course, knew what pickups were, but as to what their role was in a guitar's tone, I had very little idea, to be honest. If it works, it works, and I'm kind of happy with that, to be honest. So I spent a day sort of being shown around their workshop and them showing me different windings, different sort of materials, you know, how this affects this and how that affects that. And at the end of it, they said, right, well, let's make you something. What do you want? So, of course, you descend into a world of sort of vague superlatives then of words like creamy and all this kind of nonsense. So I started using their pickups then. I loved what I was hearing, you know, kind of it seemed like a marked improvement on what I was using at the time, which was just what was stock in whatever guitar I was playing. And fast forward then, I guess, about 2-3 years or whatever, it felt like a natural sort of progression of like, well, let's do a signature thing, you know. And that was the first time my name had ever been associated with anything, you know, or even kind of mentioned in the same breath as like, well, let's do something with your name on it. So we spent a good couple of months then developing them, and I think it's done very well. It's done very well for everyone, I guess, hopefully at the end of the day. But, you know, I think at the time both of them were still kind of wrestling that sort of balance of like day job versus winding pickups by night, you know. And I think it was sort of helpful in getting them to that point where it just made sense of like, oh, we're just pickup guys now. That's what we do. I can jack my job in. So hopefully it's done well for everyone, you know. They get great reviews whenever they're featured in guitar magazines or whatever, and you know it's always slightly nerve-wracking putting something out like that because you think, well, I like the sound of them, but that's not to say any other bugger will. But they've been really well received, you know, and like I said, anytime a guitar magazine reviews them or anytime they're mentioned in the same breath as, you know, considerably bigger pickup brands, very favourably. So it is what it is, and I love them bits, you know. I love Paul and, well, both Pauls they're called, ironically. And they're just great sounding pickups, you know. I can't say too much about it because obviously it sounds like a bloody sales pitch. But if you're looking for some Strat pickups, there are lots of Strat pickups out there, including mine.
They are really nice guys, though. And they came to the guitar show a couple of years ago and they bought a winding machine and wound on site, which I thought was brilliant because the first time I ever saw pickups being wound, I was like, oh, that's how it's done.
Well, I was going to ask because the way you made it said about they out to work and then they wind pickups into the evening, and it gave me this kind of Victorian kind of vibe. Do they do it by candlelight?
By candlelight, yeah, absolutely. Well, it's all very. I mean, it's, you know, it's weird, isn't it? In that, I remember I took grief recently for a video I did about a Clapton Strat, saying that lace sensor pickups look slightly dated. And someone replied saying, "Oh, of course. Well, the design from the '40s doesn't look dated at all, does it?" And it's like, well, it doesn't really, but it is. It's such an old technology, isn't it? You know, the idea of pickups and how they work, and it's, you know, this continual sort of evolution to try and improve upon that or find new ways to sort of reinvent the wheel, I guess. But like you said, until I physically saw them winding pickups, I had no idea what a pickup entailed. You know, it could have been a bloody SM57 underneath my scratch plate for all I knew. So yeah, watching them do it and realise how subtle changes they make as they go along then affect the tone. It's like, oh right, well that all suddenly makes sense. It's still a bit of a dark art. So
plus the other thing about that comment, and not that I'm having a go at the person who made that comment about something from the 40s wouldn't look dated, but
have a go at them, please.
Well, the other thing is that if something comes out as new in your lifetime and then ages in your lifetime, it will look dated because when it came out, it looked very modern. If something already looked of an age because because you were born in 1980 and the pickup was designed in 1950, you don't view it in the same way. I remember seeing the lace sensors when they came out, thinking, "Wow, that's a cutting edge design," and of course that's going to date.
Well, it's like buildings that started appearing, those concrete monstrosities, you know, in the 60s and 70s. It's like, well, I'm sure that looked cutting edge at one point, but now it just looks horrendously dated, you know.
Just leave Birmingham alone.
I haven't said a word about that.
A city built on concrete monstrosities.
Well, those 60s videos, isn't it? Of it's all those
Telly
ones.
Savalas and Clint Eastwood looking out over Birmingham ring roads.
Yeah. It's just.
What is the story there? I saw that a while ago. I was like, is that genuinely Birmingham?
Yes, it's. I have no idea. I mean, the Telly Savalas one, I don't think Telly Savalas he's just been paid to voice over some video.
Right.
And they must have paid a fortune because, I mean, in the 70s, he was like a massive star.
Huge.
Oh, yeah, huge, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously someone in Birmingham's council went, "I'd really like to go to Los Angeles to meet up, have a really important meeting with a Hollywood star."
You don't know that. Telly Savalas might have been in LA saying, "Do you know what I want to do? I really want to go to the West Country.
The West Midlands.
That's where I want. That's where I want to be." Does anybody know if there's any work going? You know, anything around Wolverhampton?
Or he got an agent with a European arm, and they just kind of like, mate, it's like the Detroit of, you know, it's car city. We've built this city that's just for cars. We're not foreseeing any issues with congestion in the future at all. It would be a really good idea to do this.
The good, the bad, and the traffic calming measures.
And what's more, there's a shitload of crime you could clear up while you were there.
So I think I'd only got one more thing that. Well, actually, no, two things that I wanted to just talk about. One is a personal thing for me. Is how good is that Jason Isbell telly?
Yeah, very good. I noticed Mick from That Pedal Show put up a video about it the other day as well. I think the problem with that is that guitar production is just sort of, you know, the demand has increased hugely in the pandemic and sort of supply has gone down. So, yeah, unfortunately, when Fender sent me that, I was like, "Can I keep hold of it?" And they were like, "Nope, sorry, you have the only one in the UK at present." I was like, "Oh, great." Yeah, very, very nice. I really like it. I would probably put a white pickguard on it, I think, for just my kind of aesthetic thing. And it's got the white selector knob on it as well. So it's kind of like, well, either you need a black selector knob or you need a white pickguard. That just kind of, that mismatch throws my eye slightly. But yeah, very, very nice. I love the kind of relicing on it, you know, obviously a fairly divisive subject in the guitar world. Just feels very nice. You know, some of the custom shops I played where they take, I think Mick highlighted it the other day, saying, you know, when they take all of the lacquer off the back of the neck, it just feels a little bit artificial, and they've done a really nice halfway house job with the Jason Isbell tally. So yeah, it's a really nice guitar. If you can actually find one or get hold of one, give it a whirl.
I find that the how offended people get about relics really odd. I mean, I really don't like blue guitars, right?
Yeah,
I don't like them at all. But I don't feel the need to tell people who do like blue guitars that
why they are wrong that they like blue guitars. It's bizarre. I mean, it is the kind of. I did a video on it recently, and I think I referred to it as the most sort of polarising subject in the guitar world. I think it is because I've never met anyone who kind of. It's like the band Kiss. I've never met anyone who's gone. No. I'm not going to say a negative thing. I've never met anyone who says, "Yeah, I quite like Kiss." It's either like, "No, I don't like Kiss," or "I own every bootleg Kiss ever." There we go. I found my man. And actually, I say that I'm probably the exception to that rule. A couple of years ago, I did a track. I did a version of Sean O' Something.
My favourite Kiss song.
Oh, absolute tune.
The bass line is awesome.
Amazing track. Well, it's also one of the few Kiss tracks I actually know. So I got asked to do. I got asked to do 2 tracks on a Kiss album. I chose Sean or something, and the other one was like a proper rocker called like The Oath or something, maybe.
Oh my God, off The Elder.
Oh, The Elder, yeah. So they were the 2 tracks that I chose. Obviously, one was a little bit more in my wheelhouse than the other. And then I was out in Arizona at the time with Alan, and had a phone call off the guy who put together the album. It was a kind of charity album for like palliative cancer care. And he phoned me saying, "I'm at a Kiss conference, we're talking about the album, can I Skype you and like beam you onto the big screen and you talk about the thing?" I was like, "Yeah, crack on." And then literally kind of beamed in, and the webcam I had was a view of the room with what seemed to be like 1 million people in it. And then I'm being fired questions like, "So why did you choose that track?" I'm like, "To be honest, it's the only one I know." And they were like, "Okay, moving swiftly on." Like, you clearly don't dress up in your spare time.
I'd like to point out I don't.
Though you're only a string of onions and a baguette short of being pseudo-French, aren't you? So let's be a little bit careful about that.
Yeah, all right, but consider this my anti-Brexit T-shirt,
Right.
if you like.
Right.
I'm fully aware, Ant, that you've got to go.
I do. I need to dash.
You've got something very interesting to be doing, I heard. So
Yeah, let's not talk about what I do in the other parts of my life.
he's dressing up as Gene Simmons, for anyone wondering.
So I think we should probably wrap it up, and we'll talk about your 1962 Strat from the house clearance when we do this again. So
Absolutely.
I'd just like to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for jumping in last minute. And
Pleasure.
I mean, it was like a horrible email to have to send that we had recorded with Bernard Butler, and then Bernard sent me an email this week and went, "Actually, you can't put that episode out yet. I've said things that I'm not allowed to say yet. Can you hold it?" And it was like, shit, it's going to go out on Monday.
Well, I'm sure I've said many things I'm not allowed to say as well, but you crack on.
You've done a very good
get
job.
This mixed and out.
Yeah, well, you've done a very, very good job there of actually also sort of giving a bit of a lift to the Bernard one that's coming after this as well. So I'm loving your work there, Jace. That was like almost a professional podcaster's piece of work there. And Chris, the one thing I would say is we need to stop arguing about relicking on guitars, or we should stop arguing about colours on guitars. We just need to focus our attentions to the shit show of a government we've got and put all our ire and all our anger into questioning everything they're doing. And the rest of it's all by the wayside. Kiss fans should be able...
I turned it to Jonathan Pye, so yeah, probably best not get started.
No, it's been lovely to meet you, and thanks very much for coming on. And we must do this again.
Yeah, too right. Well, let me know when and where. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, guys.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So it's not the end. Obviously, it's the end of the chat with Chris, but it's not the end because we thought we'd have a little regroup and do a bit of housekeeping. Actually,
yes.
Pick up on the bits we forgot while we were talking to Chris. But first and foremost, we need to say thank you to Focusrite, don't we? Because
we do. Thank you, Focusrite. Thank you, Luke. Thank you for constantly emailing me and reminding me that I've forgotten to send you the stuff again. But I'm so glad that you're on it, and I'm not.
They're lovely, aren't they? They're just fab.
They are. In fact, I've got a meeting with them on Wednesday. I say meeting. I mean coffee. I'm meeting them for coffee on Wednesday.
Cool. So yes, lovely people, but we didn't get a chance to say it in the episode. So thanks again. You're just lovely. And obviously, Chris, what a star for jumping in at pretty much a moment's notice.
It was. I mean, it was. We've recorded a great episode with Bernard Butler. Really good. And then he told us loads of stuff about what's coming up in the world of Bernard Butler, and then said, "I'm really sorry you can't use it. I'm embargoed by the record company. It's going to be a few more weeks before you can put the episode out." Which is absolutely fine, and I completely get that. The issue then was we'd only got a couple of days to try and get a podcast done, recorded and edited for Monday morning. And
we've used our Euros excuse. We use the Euros as an excuse for being a couple of weeks out and missing an episode completely.
Yes.
And neither of us like the Open enough to use that as an excuse. So
no.
So we had to really pull a finger out and do one.
Yeah. And we've got other people lined up as well. We've got another guy has agreed to come on, who unfortunately has managed to injure himself quite seriously. So that's been put off by a month or so. So, they are there. It just kind of threw a spanner in the works, really.
And we're starting to think about number 50, aren't we? I can't believe it.
We are, because Bernard will be number 40.
Yeah.
It's really funny because... we've been doing this for so long now. I've just paid all of the bills again for the next 12 months. I've been able to put them onto SoundCloud Pro and stuff like that. So,
who'd have thought it, eh?
I never thought we'd get to 10, let alone 40.
No, and we're now looking at 50, aren't we? Which means we really ought to go back to Keith Scott, didn't we? How the hell are we going to sort that?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to get on that. Next week, I'm going to try and get Keith Scott. I should also say hello to Ian as well.
Mr. Sloan.
Mr. Sloan, who very kindly said to me about 6 months ago, if you ever want pedal steel putting on a track, just let me know.
Right.
And I messaged him last week and I went, were you serious about putting pedal steel on the track if I ever wanted it? And he was like, yeah. So I sent him up the track last week.
Right. But you've not had it back yet?
No, not had it back yet. I mean,
what are you thanking him for, then?
His email to me was great. He said, do you want to give me some advice of where you want the pedal steel to come in, or do you just want me to wank all over it? And then you can edit it. And I was just like, let's just go for the latter and we'll edit it.
Full on jizz.
So I'm really looking forward to hearing that.
Oh, brilliant.
So,
I am,
cheers,
actually.
Ian.
I am. That'd be cool. Right, we'll toddle off because it's actually Sunday evening. It's nearly 6:15. It's going out in the morning. I've got to do a little bit of tinkering with it.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, it's all right.
Well, okay, that's it then. And enjoy, Chris. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, Bernard, next time round. Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully, if the embargo date has passed by that point.
You could all be back in lockdown by then.
No, don't.
Thanks for listening to 9 to 42, the podcast from the team at the Guitar Show UK. If you've enjoyed the show, then please remember to hit the subscribe button and share with other like-minded souls. For more information about 9 to 42, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram at the Guitar Show UK. This has been an A Short Stories production.